31-6 is the final. Michigan defeats Bowling Green tonight, Sam. It wasn't the prettiest of wins, but a win's a win. Michigan is 3-0 as they head into Big Ten play next week against Rutgers. But we got to talk about tonight. The story of the game was J.J. McCarthy struggles, 3 interceptions. He had back-to-back ones there in the first half, and that last one, he was trying to throw it away, he said, but the guy still went up there and nabbed it, sort of reminiscent of a Charles Woodson play at Michigan State a long time ago. But here, we got to talk about J.J. and what you saw tonight from the Michigan starter.
Yeah, so, look, win is win, like you say, you always start with that. But this is one of those games where the coaching points are going to be really, really easy. Sometimes you talk to coaches and players, it's a little bit harder to get guys to kind of dial into corrections when they're going as well as Michigan went the first couple of weeks. It won't be that hard coming out of this game because I felt like they came out as a team pretty flat. I think we saw lots of missed assignments. And in JJ's case, I think it was an example of him trying to do too much. What you got to know about him is, as high as people were, present company included, on his first couple of weeks, he wasn't, I don't think that he's the kind of kid that starts believing his own hype like a lot of people were saying. But I do think that there is one thing that can happen to a guy like that is you try to make a correction by being Superman. Right. Because that first interception, I think, threw him off. Right. Because that was the one that was the most understandable. They were in zone. He tried to hit a crosser across the back of the end zone. Never saw the defender falling off the tight end. So, but after that, now he's chasing it. Trying to do too much. The one interception going towards the south end zone there. I think he tried to force it to the outside guy. The interception that he threw going out of bounds, he said he was trying to throw it out, but it was too close. Didn't have to be that close, right? Right. You had the flea flicker. Yeah. The flea flicker wasn't a well thrown ball. He said as much. He said, he knew he had a guy who had a cast as a defender, so he was going to give CJ a chance, but it wound up hitting the defender. So, you want to give CJ a chance with the ball not quite as much in question. And then you had the other touchdown, so you got the touchdown taken off the board going to the north end zone, right? And then there was the one where you had Tyler running down the sideline and he missed him. Look, you hear coaches say it all the time, you don't get too high with the highs and you don't get too low with the lows. I think this is a calibration game for him because everything was going right. What do you have to correct the first 2 games? This is one where you don't compound errors. When you make a mistake, on to the next one. Take what there were too many times where he just didn't take what the defense gave him. But I think we gotta not overreact. Just like you don't overreact when they win big and everything's perfect. You don't overreact in a game like this because you gotta know him. I mean, JJ. You know him. You got to know him, how he ticks.
The one thing you could say, and this is from the post game, just observing his mannerisms, you would have think they would have lost 31-6. The guy's a competitor. We know that. I know he mentioned something to you as he walked outside the press room. He's going to remember this. He's a guy that doesn't forget, and you would imagine that he will rebound next week against Rutgers.
See, I think he's a guy that takes it personally when he feels like he hurt his team.
Absolutely.
They won the game, but it's we talk about the team being flat. I think they go as he goes emotionally.
The juice wasn't there.
Right, and I feel like I think they draw that from him. I mean, if there's one thing that you can extrapolate from the first couple of games of the season, it's that he's the guy that they feed off of. And that being the case, I think he kind of felt like he let him know, but you got to know him. Like, there's no one who's going to come out of this game more focused on the mistakes than him, right? I mean, it's his coaches, of course, but this is going to be one where he's probably in there before them because he said to me walking out. And this is, he's like you said, he's sitting up at the table and he's talking to the media. He's taking responsibility and ownership for his mistakes, all of that. And then he walked over and he said, this is going to make me a monster.
Right.
This is going to make me a monster. Because, look, I see what I did wrong here. I see what I got to correct. This could be just as simple for a novice, non-quarterbacks like us. It is as simple as what they're giving me, take it. Yeah. Right? I mean, you saw it on the touchdown, that touchdown drive going this way where he hits the 2 play action passes in a row. He hits coasting underneath.
Right.
And then he comes back on the next one. And now Roman is running wide open on the post. Now you go down the field. That's an example of what we're talking about. And there were too many times where he didn't do that today. But this is one of those games where he won't throw it. You say you throw it away, you throw it out. He's not going to throw this one out. This one, I think, is a lesson. If you're going to have a game like this, have it now. Have it now in the non-conference, in the game that you know you're going to win. So you get in Big Ten play, whether it's Rutgers or some other team that you know you're going to beat up on, you're going to be way sharper in those games than you were in this one.
Well, like you said in the pregame, this is the preseason. Whether we want to call it non-conference or not, this is the preseason. The real season starts next week. But we'll get into that. We'll finish on some Big Ten questions, sort of the last 9 games there. Let's talk about the defense. Another game where they held their opponent under 250 yards. I think the one thing I have to say that was impressive, when JJ did put them in situations where they did turn the ball over and they had to come back on the field short, they responded. They held Bowling Green to field goals, the 2 field goals there in the first half. You got to like what you're seeing from this defense, especially in the secondary that's been banged up.
Yeah, I mean, I think in all phases, they responded to mistakes. Defense did, because look, there are missed assignments on defense that we didn't see the first couple of games. Guys getting out of gaps, guys, losing their responsibilities in coverage. I mean, you go back over to the offensive side, blowing protections. I mean, I think it was endemic of the night, right? Where in every phase, they just weren't as sharp as we've seen them be. And so, but defensively, key moment in the game, look, you're down on this end of the field, and great play by Jalen Harrell to go out, pressure on it. It was a screen, but he got there even a little quicker than I think the quarterback was expecting. Then Chris Jenkins feels it. Like, that's how you know a defensive lineman is thinking the game, when he can feel the screen. Right. He felt the screen, fell off, picked it off, gives the ball back to the offense, they score. And now that kind of got Michigan back on track, doing what they needed to do. So they responded. But, they got some things to clean up as well. I mean, we hadn't seen linebackers getting out of gaps, right? We hadn't seen guys losing contain a time or two. We certainly hadn't seen any of the coverage busts that we saw today. So, clean up on aisle 3 in every phase. If special teams had a turnover, right? So it was every phase, and I think it was just one of those games. It was one of those games. This is not making an excuse. Hard to get up for every opponent. Give credit to Lefty, Scott Lefty. Give credit to Lefty's team, because they came in here, man, and they weren't rolling over, right? You can start to feel like you're good enough that you're just gonna roll over a team even with your B plus effort or C effort even. And Lefty squad wasn't gonna let them do that. Like they quarters. Yeah, they came out and they were giving them a game, the first part of it, and said, hey, you're not gonna just be able to go through the motions and beat us. Yeah. Right. So give Bowling Green that kind of credit. But that's a healthy reminder for Michigan too. Look, you got to bring your A game or close to it every night if you expect to go out and win games comfortably, win games cleanly. It was comfortable tonight, but it wasn't clean. So, they got that to do. But, positives, it may not show up as much in the box score, but you can kind of see some things in the run game come together. That 54-yarder from Blake. I mean, the whole first drive looked like last year with them running the ball. I think it was four plays, all runs. The 54-yard counter where Blake shakes a dude in the open field, right? So they had that really going. I think you could really see them do something we talked about last week. You remember we talked about how they balanced the touches between Blake and Donovan. Yeah. Blake had 30 and Donovan had 27. But you and I talked about, okay, scheming touches is one thing, scheming rhythm is another. How do you get Donovan in a rhythm? Because Blake was getting like back-to-back touches. Yeah. Donovan not so much. Well, what did they do tonight? You kind of saw them make sure Donovan got consecutive touches, not consecutive plays, but you know what I mean? He would get a carry here. He wouldn't come out of the game. He'd get another carry a play or two later. And so they made sure to try to work him and get him in the rhythm. They kind of sacrificed a couple of their double tight stuff to get him on the field more, to get him touches. So I thought that was a positive as well. There are some things to build on, but more than anything else is, look, man, you gotta you can't come out flat against any opponent. And you certainly can't press. You can't compound mistakes by pressing the way they did last night. And I don't think we're going to see them do it again.
Okay, let me get to this last part. I want to touch on this. Obviously, the 3-game non-conference schedule is over. Big Ten play starts next week, and Jim Harbaugh comes back next week. What are your expectations as Jim goes back into his leading this team on the field here on Saturdays?
So I think they'll take Rutgers seriously. Rutgers is a better team. Gavin Wimsatt, the quarterback, is better than he was when Michigan saw him last year. We saw Rutgers come in here as a different quarterback. We saw Rutgers come in here a couple years ago and give Michigan a bit of a game. They were physical. This is the kind of game that I think you like. Even against Rutgers, if you're going to have a game like this, have it before you play Rutgers. Because I don't think Rutgers is going to be able to sneak up on Michigan. I certainly don't think they're going to sneak up on JJ. You like I said, just knowing him, you aren't going to see JJ play like that again. I mean, he was pressing tonight. You get it. He admitted as much, some out of character things, but he's human, right? He's human. He made some human mistakes.
I'd argue that was probably his worst game he's played as a starter.
It was, but it happens. Guys have bad games.
They won 31-6. They played an inferior opponent. They survived.
And if he grows from it, then you can look back on it and say it was a positive. I'm not minimizing it as a significant thing. It certainly was, and not making any excuses for it. Neither did he. But I think he's going to be better for it in the aftermath.
Okay, well, that's going to wrap up our coverage here from Michigan Stadium. For Sam Webb, I'm Josh Newkirk for the Michigan Insider.